In today's video, we're going to be seeing how the simple $230 motorized bike has been holding up. As a refresher, this is a $100 Cranbrook frame from Walmart right off the shelf, and a $130 motor kit from Amazon, the Motoos motor to be exact. If you're new to the channel, we do weekly videos exploring every aspect of putting cheap motors on cheap bikes. It's really that simple, so sit back and enjoy the ride. Considering the fact that a motorized bike is nothing more than a DIY moped, I think at $230 we got a sweet little deal. Granted, I have added a few extra dollar signs into the build, but we'll get into that later in the video as these are not necessities. So, how's the build been holding up? Well, because I like to end on a high note, and I think it's mostly positive, we're going to get the negatives out of the way first. If it wasn't for one glaring concern, I would happily recommend this kit to new builders. I feel that most of the quality on this kit is definitely worth the price, but unfortunately, when it comes to the gas tank, there's that safety issue we had to deal with. I've never purchased a trouble-free two-stroke kit, and you can expect to always have to do little tweaks no matter which kit you buy, but when it starts pouring gas onto your hot motor, that's kind of where I draw the line. From comments in the original Motoos video, viewers on Discord, and my own personal experience, it looks like this is a very common issue where the nut pops off of the petcock and dumps your tank. So to preemptively deal with this issue, I would just take a Dremel, a cutting wheel, and cut the nut off, and then replace it with some hose and clamps, as I've done here in this clip. And lo and behold, in the past few months, I've only had two other issues with this motor, which is actually pretty impressive. One is the base gasket was a little thin from the factory, causing the squish band to be too tight, and it led to some knocking. I fixed this right away just by making my own gasket out of Felpro material, which you can buy from any auto parts store. And second is that the exhaust system uses bolts instead of studs, which means the bolts bottom out before the muffler is tight against the cylinder. This can cause exhaust leaks, spewing oil all over your cylinder in the best case scenario, and blowing out your exhaust gasket in the worst case scenario. To alleviate this issue, I just added an extra washer and some thread locker to each side, and we're good to go. The right way to do it would be to replace the bolts with studs. Moving on to the positives, we're going to start this list off with the fact that you get a real NT speed carburetor, which just has better quality parts and better performance versus the clones. If you want to know what the actual differences are, I'll leave a link in the description to my carburetor video, which goes in depth on the differences between the knockoffs and the real thing. We also get a lock nut for our clutch cable. This is a small thing, but it's a big improvement for quality of life, as if you strip these out, you don't have to replace the entire clutch arm, and they're just easier to adjust the tension of the cable. Another underappreciated little bonus that makes things easier for us down the road is the fact that the CDI comes with a nice quality silicone-based cable and a sealed boot for the spark plug. The keen-eyed and eared subscribers may have noticed that I didn't add the fact the single-piece jug is a negative. Well, I normally would, as I don't care much for them because of convenience. However, this one has left me impressed, so I won't focus on the negative because it's got too many positives. This single-piece jug is a G4 styling, which means it has the performance of a G4. It's a peppy little motor that has no problem pulling me up hills. It's also low profile, which really comes in handy later in the video, you'll see why. And the chrome lining is solid. I have seen no flakes, no gouges, no scratches. I'm happy with this cylinder. The intake port angle in combination with the low profile jug means that you have a lot of options when it comes to aftermarket intakes, carburetors, air boxes, and a velocity stack. As you can see, I can finally run the stack with an air cleaner. Yay! Anyways, adding a bigger carburetor might be nice for you guys who really want to get into modifications. I would be curious just to see how far you can take one of these single-piece jugs. Very interesting. Maybe we'll do a future video on that. Considering the additional positives, such as the upgraded mounting hardware, the upgraded bolts for the rag joint, and the 415 chain included with the kit, I'm very happy with what I got. Moving on to our frame of choice, being the Huffy Cranbrook, which shows up in a lot of our videos and different builds. This has always been a solid frame for $100. Now, if you plan on hitting the used market, I'm sure you can find something much stronger than a Cranbrook. But if you are set on buying brand new, I don't think for $100 you can find a stronger frame than the Cranbrook. I'm not at all saying that this is an ideal frame to use for a motorized bike, but if you don't plan on going too crazy with performance modifications, look no further. It handles light bumps in the road for day-to-day cruising, no problems. And as you've seen in my Basset Blaster videos, we've been doing performance modifications to that bike, and it's been handling just fine. No cracks in the frame, all the welds are holding up. Now, unfortunately, in, I think, 2019 and up, they downgraded the quality of their coaster brake assembly. The coaster brake arm on my 2019 version is thinner and a softer metal, which is quite easy to strip out. As I found that whether you're using a motor or not on the Cranbrook, the newer ones, it's easy to spin the coaster brake arm and have a really bad day. For that reason, I highly recommend getting an upgraded, beefier rear wheel. I'll leave a link in the description to the one I like to use. I've been using on 2 of my bikes. It's got a strong coaster brake arm and a beefier hub setup with thicker spokes. I also highly recommend using caliper style brakes, but that's a no-brainer and we already know that. I'll leave a link in the description to a set of caliper brakes that work just fine on the Cranbrook, and I'll be putting on this one as well. And with all of my Cranbrook builds, I always remove the stock fenders. The thin aluminum with cheap mounting hardware is simply not designed to handle vibration from a motor. They can crack, come loose, get wedged between your tire and the frame, and send you over the handlebars. This is not a rare occurrence. This has actually happened to many builders. It's been posted up in forums, so heed the advice. Get rid of the stock fenders. Personally, I like fenders, so I use plastic ones. They can flex and bend all they want without breaking, and I can secure them with as much hardware as I want to feel satisfied. So if you've been on the fence about buying a Motoos kit, or you have one and you just want to know how it's been holding up for me, there's my experience with it over the past few months. I'd like to give a shout out to Mike Tam for letting us use some of his music in our videos. The guy's got some talent, and if it's a style of music you enjoy, go check him out. I think he would definitely appreciate it. Anyways guys, until next week's video, ride safe.
Create your mind to run as deep as a well. You'll find yourself anew. You'll find yourself anew.